purpose of tonight's meeting is to sort of walk you through the process of the work of the committee that has been formulated to take a look at this and make a plan to make this move to Falmouth High School. So I just want to do a little introduction of our work. So my initial recommendation, Carrie, would you be willing to just move it? Yeah, no, the arrow just wouldn't type. Oh. Just this one when I, okay. All right? Okay. So my initial recommendation to the school committee was presented on Monday, April 3rd, and it was to relocate the Falmouth High School program in the field to the high school campus, and it was approved unanimously by the school committee. There we go. So then we wrote an article, and it was in the November 6th town meeting. And the article was to see if the town would vote to appropriate a sum of money for the purpose of funding capital improvements. And we were listed, the school was listed in Article 4. And what we were asking for was $72,400 to update the design that had been previously done. I believe it was in 2004 and 14, I'm sorry. And Mr. Latimer made an amendment to include an option for a grass field. So the direction from town meeting to the school department was to come back and present both a grass field versus a turf field. So CDM is the agency that we're working with, and their work will consist of updating that design and providing guidance on the redesign phase to prepare a visual project to be presented at town meeting, and also to participate in two additional, at least one, but we have two additional community forums, and then be prepared to present the plan to town meeting. So here's our membership, and we put out on our website for people to apply to be on the task force with us, and we have several members here with us tonight, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves in a moment. But you can see we have community representation, and we have a district advisory. And so I would just ask quickly for the people who are on the committee to stand up and introduce themselves. Mary, let's start with you.
Mary Gans, principal of Falmouth High School.
Lori Cranshaw, parent. Kathleen Burke, athletic director.
Robert Ryan, parent.
Tom Hawkins, parent.
Michelle Drew, community member.
Courtney Lima, field hockey coach.
Derek Almeida, math teacher at the high school and also the head football coach.
I'm Stephen Kapulka, I'm a parent and also a youth lacrosse coach.
Carrie Shanahan, parent and teacher in the system.
Pat Murphy, Director of Finance and Operations.
Bill Ryder, school committee member.
Okay. So our big working group identified three different areas that we needed to look at. One was the financial area. What is this going to cost in different phases? What are the health concerns? We've heard from the community repeatedly about concerns about the inlay in an artificial turf field. So we have a group that's studying just the health piece. And then the last group is about the community and reaching out to the community to figure out what it is that the community wants and to get guidance from the community in moving this project forward. So Patrick?
Sure. So our group is focused on working with CDM Smith, which is the engineering company that's been involved in estimating and reviewing this project for many years. Obviously, the 2014 project specifications that they created are a little bit out of date, and the town meeting asked us to come up with some alternative options also. So by March 1st, we've tasked them with coming up with estimates, just estimates for both an artificial turf field and a natural grass field. They'll present those estimates to a community forum similar to this and help us go through the pros and cons around both fields at that time, and then they'll also do a similar presentation at our town meeting on 4/9 and 4/10. The general, I know that everybody still wants a number. The general number for the artificial turf field, inclusive of lights and stands, of approximately $3 million, has not changed in a dramatic fashion according to CDM in terms of as they compare what they built in other districts recently. So they will be able to provide us some good cost estimates. There's a difference between cost estimates and project specifications. We are not asking them to create full project specifications by town meeting, because we don't want to pay for this kind of document twice, right? We pay for it once. If it's going to be a natural grass field, they'll have a project document that is different than an artificial turf field. So they will come up with estimates, and we've tasked them to present those both to the community forum and the town meeting. Anything else?
If you have questions as we go along, please interrupt. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Chris Matthews. I'm a parent of a student at Falmouth High School as well as a coach. My question is on the estimates for grass versus a turf field. Are they putting provisions in for upkeep as well as the initial installation? There's a lot more upkeep, a lot more nurturing that has to go with a grass surface than a turf field, as a lot of us know, but not everybody knows that. They assume you plant grass, it grows, we're good to go. There's a lot of things involved with maintaining it, and I just didn't know if that was part of the estimate, so that you're comparing more apples to apples.
Excellent question. It's a question that was raised and discussed at one of our earlier meetings. So there's 2 points of that. One is what is the involvement of the DPW in this town, and we have invited representatives from the DPW to start attending these committee meetings and then the community forums to speak to the maintenance component and their ability to do maintenance on either or and what that would require. And then the second piece of that we've talked about previously is the amount of uses that are available on an artificial turf field versus a natural grass field. And one of our community members remembered that the town paid for a report by a different vendor, Gale Associates, about the status of the state of all the fields in town. And in that, they created a metric that suggested you get this many uses out of a natural grass field, you get X plus on an artificial turf field. So that's a different document that the DPW is going to help us speak to also to provide. So there's different ways of getting a sort of an ROI, a return on investment on something. One is sort of the full cost of operating it, and the other is how many uses do you get per year out of each field.
Yes.
Yeah, John Doe. The other question I have is about with artificial turf, and I'm sure you've done research, I have too, on both. You have to do, I agree with them about the apples to apples. The costs of maintaining our grass fields and getting those numbers going forward with an increase rate over 10 years. The artificial fields are good if you use them more. They're good for like 12 years. If you use them a lot more, they're down to maybe 10 or 9 years, and then you have to replace them with artificial turf. Then you got to have a disposal fee for the materials, and that has to be factored in as well. Who takes that ground rubber or that material? Who's going to dispose of that? What the costs are for that? And then the cost of that going forward with inflation for the, let's say, 10 years down the road, replacing that field again versus grass. I think that those are real numbers to me.
Yep.
And so it's a 15-year thing to do that forward. That's more realistic than saying it's going to cost X. Because in 10 years, if you use a lot, you're going to have to replace that field.
The good news is we're not early adopters on this. So the estimates or the information that will come back is absolute, actual information on how other communities what other communities have experienced.
You also, I know you've got an injury rate up there. The NFL did some research on this, and they surveyed the players. A lot of players said that they have a lot more injuries, ankle, knee, etc., twisting injuries on artificial turf that doesn't release the football as well as regular grass. So there are some statistics about that. Artificial turf does require antiseptic treatments periodically and a grooming machine, which I'm sure you've already researched and know that too. So going forward, it's not maintenance free.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't even include
That's correct.
tears in the material because of replacing that section. So it isn't a maintenance-free thing at all. My point is just apples to apples going forward, cost of maintenance, with the factor of a replacement field after, let's say, 10 years. I mean, that's a fair view of it, I think. Now, you can also recover some fees, I'm sure, because people will pay to be an artificial turf, so there's an offset there, but that's an unknown. Thank you. That's my 2 cents.
No, excellent.
Marcy Clattenburg, I'm a resident, and I'm just curious about, you've been talking about the artificial turf. Are you just looking at from rubber, or are you looking at organic infills? What are you looking at for infills? You're just comparing several kinds now?
So when they, if it went out to bid, if an artificial turf field went out to bid, what they typically do now is present 3 or 4 options for infill. And you get bids back on 3 or 4 options. Some of it, you're right, is coated rubber. Some of the old stuff is more just uncoated rubber. That's not used very more. Coated rubber tends to be what's used mostly, but there is organic materials now. Cork, coconut husk,
Coconut.
silicone. Yeah, there's 3 or 4 different options. So that's something that will be. If this went out to bid in that way, there would be 3 or 4 options, and the committee that is helping us on this would sort of say, yeah, this is what we want, this is what we spent.
Yes.
Peter Hargraves, I'm a resident, and I'm interested in this topic. My concern is, I guess that this is a school-based project, and you're talking about the football field only, and not the other fields in town. And so I would encourage you, since we're at the front end and we have a chance to steer this a little, to be more strategic, especially with respect to the grass fields. One of the issues we have in Falmouth is there's no maintenance personnel, a half a full-time equivalent assigned to maintenance. If we do an analysis just for the high school field of grass versus artificial, and what does it take to maintain them, I think it would significantly disadvantage the grass, not to look more broadly and say, what's a win for the community as well? We have these 30-some odd other fields out there, and I know that the recreation department has a 5-person staff from another town that has pristine grass-looking fields, it looks like a beautiful golf course, and they have a staff to maintain it. It would be a win for the community if the grass field were considered in the context of the necessary maintenance for the entire town, so that the football field, if it were natural, would get its fair share of that good maintenance, which we don't currently provide anywhere. And so I would hate to see this as just the football field, artificial versus natural, because I think it's loaded against natural, especially on the maintenance, if we don't really consider it more holistically. I know there are a few more moving parts, but I think you can figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any comment on that?
I don't.
We're involving the
We are,
DPW.
right, we are
Yes.
setting up a meeting with both Peter McConerty and Ray Jack to have these conversations. But we have not necessarily broadened our scope to all of the fields in town. No, we have not done that.
So as a community project, and considering that the artificial turf was voted down once and twice at town meeting, I think, and once at the polls, I would encourage you to broaden it and make it more of a community project rather than just a school project.
Thank you. Mr. Calparis?
I agree with this gentleman what he's saying concerning all the fields. However, the flexibility and the adaptability of the field we're proposing has many functions to it, more than just football. I think that's what has to be examined very carefully. In fact, in my mind, I like to have 2 artificial fields and a new track. Design that whole operation over again. The key here for this field is so you can play all year round. You can do things on that field that you cannot do on grass field. You're right about grass. It's beautiful. It can be maintained and so forth. I have no problem with that. However, for what we can do here at this school, and we've always been a forerunner. I've been involved since 1955 with sports in high school. And I can say this to you only, that we've always been a forerunner. We've always been number 1 on the Cape. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Calparis. Does anyone else have a question about, yes, please.
Chris Elves, you got a student in the high school. And this $2 million price tag for the field, does that include locker rooms, restrooms, concession stand? Stuff that a lot of other towns have that we should really be putting into this field if we build it?
So we do have a meeting with CDM to update the project scope on what we want, right? And the way they typically handle it is say, okay, here's the baseline bid. What does that consist of? And then what are the alternatives? And alternatives can range from lights to stands plus a range of stands. There's requirements for bathroom facilities. So they do put alternatives in there. What the bid was in 2014, it included the artificial turf fields, some fencing, stands, lights, and bathroom facilities. A modular facility that would provide bathroom facilities right next to the.
So there was no locker rooms?
There was no locker rooms in that bid in 2014.
That should really be considered in this proposal. And one more question, are you planning on going to some of these other towns to look at the fields they built, like Durfee, Nauset, Marshfield, at all, to see what has worked and what hasn't worked for them? Is there any plans on going to visit and talking to these people?
I think we have had.
We have over the
We've had
years done
conversations
that,
over the years with the fields.
and nothing has
Nothing
changed
has really
dramatically.
come from it.
You have some expertise in Barnstable.
Yeah,
Yes.
we do have local
Connections.
expertise, but and the other side of it, we do rely on the engineering team that does dozens of these things also. So, how long have these fields been used?
Oh,
10, 15 years at least?
I played on them when I'm 60, so
Oh, okay.
I know long time ago. But it's really has evolved in the technology. But at the high school level, 20 years is a good thing. It's been around for 20 years. Kind of new.
Hi, Brian Weber, staff member. Quick question. With moving the field to the high school, does that mean that it's opening up the locker rooms at the high school potentially? So adding the design of the locker rooms doesn't necessarily part of the scope of stuff you guys are looking at?
That's a question that we would be talking through with the engineers. We have a committee meeting scheduled for the 25th, something like that.
What, can I just, one of the issues they have at Marshfield is that they don't have locker rooms, and the kids are trampling through the halls, and they have damaged tiles and floors. This is something we really got to think about. If we're going to do this project, we need to do this right the first time. We can't shortchange because we don't want to build a locker room, or we don't want to build a bathroom or a concession stand. If we're going to do this project, we got to do it right from start to finish.
I agree with you, and we need people like you to support it publicly, because I
100%
totally
behind
agree. If we're going to do it, we need to do it right, we need to do it well. Totally agree. And we heard it's so funny that you say the Marshfield story, because I just heard that recently, of football players tracking through their building and making a mess. And so that is not something that we want.
I think it's very important that we go talk to people who are managing these fields and these facilities and get their take and find out what they did wrong and what's right. It's very important. I'm lucky because I go to a lot of football fields with my kids being in different football programs, and I have talked to some of these field managers, and it's not a lot of work to maintain some of these fields if it's done properly.
And we can learn from their mistakes.
Yes.
So that we don't make them right out of the gate.
Plenty we can go see.
Great. Yes, hi Karen.
Hi. So my name is Karen Carson. I have 2 boys that are student athletes here for Falmouth. So just a couple comments. Number one, I think Pat hit the nail on the head when he said we're not early adopters. If anything, we are so far behind the times. As a parent sometimes of athletes, it's embarrassing. I feel bad for the kids. Some people say it gives them character to play on the fields we do. Yeah, it gives them a lot of other things though too. The other thing is this isn't just a football field. This is about the soccer team, the field hockey team, the lacrosse team. This is bigger than the football program. And so I don't want us to get so narrow-sighted that we think it's just a small group of kids. This is for all of the kids of Falmouth, not just the high school. It's for our, if there's time and space, for community groups, the band. It's for our entire school community and the community of Falmouth. So you've got my support. I know the kids are ready to finally be proud of their facilities. Our field house is beautiful. We've got a great ice rink now. It's time to bring our fields into the 21st century as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hi, Gina.
Hi, it's me. Is there a possibility to use this field to make money in the summertime?
That has come up.
You know, is that something that you could also present to the town?
You know, here's what I would suggest on that. The answer is yes. Other towns absolutely make money. Mass Maritime is probably the closest one to us that makes some money renting out their fields. What I would not suggest is that that should be truly part of a business plan, because you're setting up expectations about, you know, there would be X amount of revenue, and then, you know, what happens when it doesn't come in. I think there's a possibility of making some revenue, and potentially that revenue could be set aside for whether it's maintenance or, you know, from 10 years down the road when the turf needs to, if it was an artificial turf field, needed to be replaced one way or another, it could go to defer those costs. I think there's ways to handle that. The town is very good at sort of allocating funds for very specific purposes and keeping it to that, so that would be easy to do. But promising that you're going to get $35,000 or $40,000 in rental fees for an artificial turf field, I think is would not be the most honest way to present something.
Yes?
Just a quick question, would the Pop Warner program be able to play on this field?
Do you want to speak to that?
Well, just probably yes. Of course, if it's turf, and right now we're cutting this turf grass thing, but Pop Warner in particular, people ask me, when would the community be able to use the field? Sundays is typically a very low use day with the high school teams. A few teams might come in and practice on Sunday afternoon, but we don't allow our teams to practice Sunday morning. And for example, that's one of the times that Pop Warner wants to use the field. And the advantage to turf, and you're going to be hearing this, is the number of uses. You can let outside groups use your field if it's not going to damage it. So yes, evenings, weekends, there are times available when the school athletic programs won't be on it.
Can I just follow up with the follow up with this gentleman was saying earlier that the field that's allocated for the Pop Warner program is if anyone's familiar with this, is atrocious, right? It's I would call it subpar for any kind of playing field, right? The maintenance, lines on it, unevenness, which, you know, helps cause injury. No stands, you know, no facilities. I mean, you've got grandparents coming to watch these kids who have to stand, and I think Falmouth is better than that. You know, if we're talking about this money, I think, like Mr. Albert said, let's do it right and just let's make this. You know, I've traveled all through the course of the football season to see what other communities have, and we're really lacking behind. You know, and I just really think that, you know, we should bring this program up to speed. You know, they're the ones who started the feeder program for the high school, and to get kids interested in safety first. That's all I want to say. It's could really, you know, use a good improvement. So
Makes perfect sense. Any other comments? Okay. Yeah, I just want to quickly go through the other committees. So we do have a committee that's looking at health considerations. That continues to come up. And their purpose statement is really to evaluate the impact of both artificial turf and grass fields on the health and welfare of student athletes. And they're doing research and will present findings on the following. And so those are the pieces that we've heard about, the types of the fill, the synthetic versus the organic. They're going to look at environmental factors, injury recovery, someone mentioned, and impact on player development and competitive opportunity. So that particular group will focus on the health considerations. And then the next piece is the community considerations. So really, we want to understand what the community's priorities and needs are. And this is part of what tonight was about, was to really hear, what is it that you want? So that we have a good idea moving forward and we can build a plan around what the community wants. Because we want this thing to pass this time, right? We're all in agreement that we need a new field, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I just want to make sure. So moving forward, we need to hear from you. And we've set up a survey that speaks to a couple of different points. And I know some of my committee members couldn't get access to it, so we have a little computer problem, which we will fix. But I encourage you to go onto it, please, and give us feedback. Because I need to be able to say, when I stand up and present the plan, this is what the community has told us. And this is the recommendation that we're making.
How did you get on the survey?
Great question, and I actually have some slides, so can you hold for 1 minute? Okay, so let's just go over our timeline. Here we are with our first community forum, and then the task force will meet again. Our second community forum will be February 1st, and that forum will be focused on health and wellness. That's the second subcommittee. And then we'll have another task force, and then another community forum. And then the task force presentation to the school committee and CDM will be in attendance. That's on March 13th. We're going to ask the school committee to act on the recommendations of our committee on the 27th, and then we will be, depending on the vote and how that goes, we will then move that recommendation forward in the April 6th town meeting. So I think it's a pretty aggressive timeline. So, to the question of how do we get there? If you go on the Falmouth Public Schools website and you go to the tab that's community, you go down and you'll see field committee. See my little arrow there? And you click on field committee. Carrie? And then you'll find something that says community voices. And that piece is live and will be live through the entire process. So you can always go on that and make some comments about that. And can you just back up for 1 second? And so people have been going on that and have been giving us some feedback, and I have tallied it up, and there's nothing really in the feedback that I haven't heard here tonight, which is really great. We have also created a separate survey that will be linked again to this. No, you can just leave it, that's fine. That will have more questions, they'll be more specific and more tailored, like, what do you believe belongs in the scope of this project? Do you think, are the restrooms, and you click on that, and stands, and you click on that, and concession. So we really want to be able to tally some of that data to say, this is what the community is saying that we need. to make this project successful. So questions about our work? Yes?
I was just thinking about reaching people beyond people who are connected to the schools.
Yes.
Because it seemed to me the last time with this, it's almost like people just don't have enough information. Voters who might not have direct connections to school-age students or parents who are talking about it. And what do you think is the most effective way to campaign, for lack of a better word, I guess?
It's a really good question. I think through social media. The enterprise is a big one. Enterprise is still really popular. Word of mouth, kids, athletes, precinct meetings. Oh, that's a great idea, Steve. Showing up at precinct meetings. But I think, Gina, your concern is a really good one, because we have people here tonight, but if we don't have ambassadors out in the community, I'm afraid that we won't get the word out and we won't communicate it well. So if you have suggestions for us, we are more than happy, because we need some cheerleaders for this project. I'm sorry?
We need to find somebody who's run a campaign before too, a successful campaign.
Love the idea.
Yeah, that was going to be I was going to say the same thing, Karen.
Yeah, that's what people do.
So I think it's a great idea.
I mean, is David Pluff around? I mean, seriously. But that's our issue. I mean, we have an older demographic. And I'm hearing, I'm not listening to everyone or seeing everyone, but every older person I talk to is against this. And the people that want it don't want turf. And we know those are the people that are going out to vote. So how do we convince them? I'm wondering, older people I don't know if they're on Facebook. Do they have social media? So we almost need a professional to run a campaign for us, or we need some consulting here, because I'm thinking we're going to do all this work, and we're getting shot down again. That's my fear. That people are, there's an older demographic in this town that they drive through this town and they go, there's a lot of fields here. They don't need fields, and I'm afraid of that.
Schools have to be very careful. We can't really we need kind of you to be out there campaigning for this as community members.
But you guys can consult. You can,
absolutely. We absolutely, and we will continue to put information out there, right?
We can be information.
Yeah.
That's our piece. There's a line that I can't cross, right?
I guess I'm not saying go out and hire someone, but I mean, I think we need.
But the idea and the spirit of it, you're absolutely right. Yes.
Hi, I'm Erin Lavin. I'm a student athlete, so personally, here I am a young person, and we can only go through the adults' voices. We cannot vote in these meetings, but this is what we all want. We want turf field. We want something different. So I think that we should, like he said, we need to really get out to the people who are voting. We need them to vote for us. We need a voice, because we don't have a voice in this.
Can I make a little adjustment to what you just said?
Right.
You do have a voice. And I think you have a very powerful voice. And I do, I've seen it. I've seen you go in front of the Board of Selectmen, the girls field hockey team, remember? You do have a voice, and we do need student athletes. So we need your help.
If I can go back to what a couple of people have said in here. Mr. Gelfie's right. There's a lot of people that have their own opinions about turf versus grass. Everybody thinks of the old style turf and how bad it was back 20 years ago. Well, just like everything, cars, food, everything's come a long way. What they don't realize is everybody thinks grass is the greatest thing. And I'm not against grass at all, but I don't think a lot of these people who are against turf realize how much it takes to properly take care of a grass field. If it rains and you drive a lawnmower on it, you've created a rut that now these kids are tripping over and they're getting hurt. If they're not taken care of between seasons, then you have nothing to come back to but a mud puddle. I don't think they realize that between a lacrosse game and a field hockey season, you have to replace goal areas. If you don't, all you have is mud. there's no grass left there. So I'm not against the grass, but there isn't, if you're gonna run multiple seasons with multiple teams on a field, grass isn't the effective way to do it anymore. There's way too much time, maintenance, money, chemicals, you name it, that have to be added to that process in order to make it 100% versus, and I know turf has its downfalls, but you can actually create more damage to our kids by giving them a subpar field because it isn't maintained properly versus a turf field, which is a lot less maintenance in between games. And I don't think a lot of people that are out in our community realize that. I don't think they realize that over practicing a field, just doing a simple drill in the same spot, now you've created wheatgrass and it can't grow back before you're going to use it the next time. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. So if there is some way or people that can go to these meetings, get out there and make this word known as well, I think it would educate people more to be able to make a proper decision based on having all the information at their hands.
And with what Chris
Really
is
good
saying-
points.
What Chris is saying, this is why we need to go see these other fields. Talking with some of these field managers and the process of building these fields. I'm told if it's raining out, that field will drain within 30 minutes and the kids can still play. No mud, nothing. You don't have a grass field this high. It's about a foot and a half deep, filled with pellets. It's something we need to look at. Secondly, I want to bring up is to get more people interested in this field. Is our only revenue source is going to be through tax dollars, or should we be looking at grants, private donations, corporate donations to help make it more attractive to people?
So that was the how the previous iteration of this sort of was presented, that it was a public-private partnership. I think the challenge to that is that there were absolutely some promises. The challenge is always the commitment of when does the cash show up? When does the cash show up to actually, were there any contracts written that there were a lot of verbal promises. So from my own personal perspective, I have concerns about that. If you can get a contract with someone saying, yeah, I'm going to give you $2 million, that's a different thing. And they actually have $2 million. That's a different thing. But most of these fields have been, that other towns have done, have been publicly funded fields. So I'm not aware of a public-private partnership that has worked recently. But I'm absolutely willing to look into something.
You have to think outside the box here. There are a lot of people who just not going to have their taxes raised.
Well, Chris, I will say that the last go-around, I mean, they were going to get a turf field for half the price. The town knew that, and it didn't matter to them. So I don't think that's the issue. Like, I honestly don't even think that the dollar amount's the issue. Whether it's 2 million, 5 million, 8 million, when someone goes in there to vote, I don't think it's going to matter the amount. It's whether they think this is a positive thing for the town or not. And yeah, it's going to take you guys have a huge voice. Like, I think they're the most important ones. They have to be out there, whether they have to bang on doors or be at Stop and Shop and the other supermarkets. I mean, that's what it's going to take, I think.
Yes, I think you were
I think if you're going to move it from a want, to a need, and I'm a senior taxpayer, to move that dial, I think it really is, it's going to be, people are focused on the cost. So I think looking at what the real differences are, again, I mean, if you repair the turf fields the way they should be for teams to play on, and I played on them too, and after games, you go to any field in town, it's been overused, it's muddy, it's ruddy. But if you were really going to get that up for every game. You'd be spending a lot more on maintenance. And that's a fact. If you're gonna leave it the way it is, people will struggle on the turf the way they have. I think so. It's a question of looking at the real number. If we're gonna have it similar to an artificial turf, we're gonna have to spend a lot more on maintenance to keep those fields for the number of teams that use them.
The DPW would absolutely agree with it.
And I think that's got to be factored in because people are going to be looking at the dollars. We narrow that, I think, that gap, and look at how many teams can be revolved on the artificial turf. I think it helps move the dial in people's minds instead of strictly looking at. I know people will be focused on how much is raising taxes. We got 40B projects. We've got police who want $1 million for lights and asphalt. I mean, these competing things are going to be hashed out at town meeting. And to move the dial, I think getting the number so it doesn't look as disparate. In real, I think that's an important thing because sometimes people just get locked on how my tax dollars going to be affected by this. And it's probably a very small percentage if you look at everything.
I don't have a number in the back of my head. I don't have the answers. And both the superintendent and I have come into this and say, we do not want to prejudge this. That's why we're using CDM and their experience, and we told them from the beginning, you're going to come up with some estimates. We want to make sure that everything is in those estimates to show, and then we're going to present the.
And full disclosure, I spoke out against it, and I did some editorial at times. And one of the reasons were the health concerns at the time. There were some studies. Washington State did a study. It had cancer clusters in soccer goalies, and they explored that thoroughly. And if you go on and look at a lot of the research, some of that stuff's been negated. It's inconclusive. It's not locked into
and that's what
respiratory or cancer. So.
Most of the meeting on 2/1
Yeah.
on February 1st is going to be focused on those questions.
I think those arguments are not as valid.
I agree. Yes. Yes, and then we'll go to Ann in the back.
Regarding the turf field, if you're going to have a multi-use facility, you absolutely have to have a turf field. You can't use grass. If every individual team had its own field, that's a different story. But if you're going to use a multi-purpose facility, as we're trying to do, you have to have turf. And even like back when I played at Gulf Field years ago.
Dave
okay.
Fusella?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Voices there. It was
aren't you on my committee?
I think so,
Yeah. Okay, I'm just saying.
I mean, I want to build a stadium out of concrete. We'll make it look like Gillette. But that being said, all things being equal, Falmouth has always been, when we grew up, we had the best facilities. Gulf Field was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it was incredible. But obviously time, things take place, et cetera, so it is what it is. But a multi-purpose field can only be turf, and I don't know all the idiosyncrasies of the cancer stuff that you hear about turf. I watched Alexander in college, and luckily at Plymouth State, we were fortunate. We had probably one of the nicest grasses fields you've ever seen in your life, but when we would travel, as Dan will tell you, 99% of the schools we went to all had multi-purpose, right, Sam, all had, where all of the teams would play at that one stadium, So it's utilized by everybody. That's the great thing about it. It's not a football field, it's not a soccer field, it's everybody. The girls lacrosse plays on it, the girls soccer team. So all of the fields use it. Not only that, but in our youth sports, we can use it with a lot of our youth in the community. But when we can also make a venue out of it whereby we can create revenue for the athletic department to take in revenue. So when if we put the bleachers up correctly and build a nice facility, the state might use it for playoffs where we can bring in revenue to help offset the cost to run the facility. So if you do it correctly and you have the correct vending stands where you're selling the food and stuff like that at the games, you really can probably, I'm not going to say it's going to make money, but it can bring in revenue to help offset that cost of maintaining the field. But having traveled a lot, watching my sons play college football, and then myself, and then throughout my own career of playing and at the various fields, if we do the facility correctly, the benefit to the community is there. And it benefits the kids, obviously. You know what I mean? That's who it's going to benefit. But it's also, as we all know in this day and age, with school choice and all these things, everybody's looking at everybody's facility, who has this, who has that, you know. I mean, today they got flat screen TVs everywhere and all, you know, so it enhances a kid who might be thinking of going to this school or leaving Falmouth, might say, okay, well, I'm going to stay here now because they have this nice facility. Unfortunately, and I know Coach Almeida would agree, and my son Alexander, you know, Gov Fuller Field is just, unfortunately, with the geese, I mean, that's a problem, you know, and it's, as you guys all know, that's out of control. I think you can get staph infection, et cetera, so.
Can we make that a health issue?
It's up there. You go back, you'll see animal waste.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
up
the Board of
there.
Health just shut us down, we can't play on that.
It's up there.
We just drove by.
I'm just saying that the money side of it, I mean, the money is what it is. We're gonna.
You're never ready to have a baby.
Do it. No, what I mean by that is we're going to always have an issue of money. I mean, whether it's for that or whatever it is in our community, this is tremendous benefit. I mean, for our community, for our kids, for us. So that's why I'm on board to see it happen, and I'm going to do everything in my power to help it happen. And I know that private public thing, as you were saying, talking to some people, I knew that there was some large commitments on the private end, but I guess it didn't happen, however it is, or it could happen. I don't know enough about it, but
we have plenty of opportunities for investments in the community. So I want to make sure that we're not saying no to that.
Right.
But on this project, we're suggesting that let's just focus on it.
But we are, luckily we have a great tax base with a lot of good people, and it would just be a great benefit to the community in general. Thank you.
Thank you.
Danny Grant, I'm a parent, coach. I wanted to speak to the infield concerns. So like the way I look at it, there's two reasons why you vote the staff, right? One is the financial reason, and the other is the health concern. So I think it's important that just to quiet the health concern, that we look into the cork infills and such, you know, and the cost difference. This fall, I coached on one of those fields with the cork infills. It was like driving rain, like full-on storm. And I was coaching a relatively elite level of 7th graders, mind you, but it was like a AAA lacrosse tournament with like the best 7th graders in New England. And you know, nobody would have even known that they were playing on a different field.
The cork didn't float up?
As far as I know, the only reason why I noticed it was cork is I reached down and I was like, oh look, these are brown, you know, but I didn't notice kids slipping anymore, or anything, you know, anything out of the ordinary. And this field actually, this is in Trumbull, Connecticut, Indian Ledge Park, and it's in a nature preserve. That's why they have the cork. Like you actually had to like bring your trash out. And we were like told, like before we could play there, we were like warned about the sensitivity of the area. So I guess I just want to stress, like, I personally don't think there's any issue with the other stuff. I've like read about it, but if cork isn't any more money, it's not a performance issue. We can still plow it, right? Even if it costs a little bit more money, I feel like we should go down that route because it quiets one crowd, right? It is the better advantage. So.
And I think they'll present us with either 3 or 4 options on infill.
The organic fills are a bigger problem in hot climates. Southern parts of the United States have more trouble with some of the organic fills because of the temperatures.
Well, fortunately, we're not.
No, we're not. We're good. It's a good thing.
Well, I think
And
for example, it's Indian Ledge Park in Trumbull, Connecticut. Is the field I've experienced.
They're talking Texas, Florida.
Yeah.
That's where they've had some issues with the organic fills. And our turf will last longer in this climate as well because the sun and the heat factors don't deteriorate quite so quickly.
Gina?
Just to quickly bring it back to getting the word out to the general public, and where you said, as you know, the schools, you can't really campaign for this. Does that mean that the task force can't either? You need like us to organize and sort of come up with a plan?
I think we do need the community to have a plan to support
But,
Yes.
but I guess what I'm asking specifically is, I know that the school department themselves can't really campaign for this.
Right.
Does that also exclude the task force that you have?
So your community members.
I think the community members could.
Okay.
The community members of the task force?
Could be part of, absolutely.
Okay. 'Cause I was just thinking
Absolutely.
it's
We
better-
have parents who are part of the task force, they're not really part of the district, although their kids are in the district, who could be working real hard to get the message out there, yes.
I was just thinking, because that, I mean, it's something that I would love to help with. I am just completely clueless when it comes, I'm, you know, a band parent. My kids.
They
are
use the
athletes,
field.
so- No, I know, that's why I'm here, and I'm also, I would be in support of it anyway, even if my children weren't going to be using it at all. I just don't feel that I'm informed enough to go out and speak to people, but I'd be happy to try to help set up. I really feel like you need to go to them, to the voters, because if you look at this room tonight, I'm not sure, I got an email from, you know, the president of the band parents. I'm not sure how everybody else found out about it, but it seems that there's only a few members of the community who aren't directly connected to the schools who are here. So it's almost as though, you know, you can't always invite people to you, you need to go to them. So to
I
come up
agree.
with a plan, you know, I'd be happy to help with that, but I just, once I got there, I would not know what to say because I'm not informed.
So I went back to our timeline, and I want you to look at the meetings, because perhaps getting informed means joining us in some of these meetings, even if it's just to listen to what's going on so that you know what to go out there and say. You are more than welcome anytime to come to any of these meetings. And this timeline, I believe, is on the website.
Are you advertising the meetings in the enterprise?
Well, Andrea Carter's right here, yes. And it was in, this one was in last Friday's, yes. So it was on our website, it had an alert, but it was also in the enterprise.
One comment to maybe address Gina's concern. As athletic director, I was involved with the last committee, the public-private partnership group that moved it forward. But you're right, we didn't get the support we needed in the community when the vote came. I thought for sure it was going to pass, you know, easily. But the reason I'm saying that is we were careful not to use school funds to do this. The committee, even photocopying things and so forth, so we had to be careful not to cross that line, but certainly, you know, I can be involved and be a liaison and be helpful to any community effort. But I think the line a lot of times is using school resources to push it.
On that note, I actually have to leave, but I will be in touch.
I'm sorry, I didn't
I
hear.
actually have to leave, I have to go pick up my children, but.
You know where to find me, Miss Gina.
I know, I always do.
Call me.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think it'd be very important before we start talking to people in the community to have an outline in place and have talking points to talk, so everyone's talking about the same issue, the same plan, the same goals. That way we don't have mixed messages going out to everybody. We should really, you know, over the next month or two, get one voice, and that's the voice we're going to use to start talking to people and getting them more interested in things.
I think that's a great idea, so consistent in the message. Yes?
Could a private entity hire like a PR firm to work with the working group to get word out?
I couldn't be involved in that. The school could not be involved.
But just to work with the committee.
We can provide information.
Okay.
The schools can provide information.
To a community group that may be working on getting the message out and doing PR.
And if there was an alternative group, we would provide them with the exact same information.
Right. If there's a pro group and a con group, they get
The exact same
the same information.
Okay.
Really good point, though. So you have your marching orders, right? Yes. Hello.
Apropos of your marching orders. I'm Mary Ann Conboy. I'm a volunteer with the Falmouth Band Parents and have been for almost 10 years. And I'm very involved in the marching band uniforms. But one of the things that a lot of people in the community may not know is that the marching band practices from August until November, Monday nights, Wednesday nights, Friday night we're typically at a home football game, practicing in the beginning, and then of course at the halftime. And then on Saturday mornings. And I think this is something that everyone needs to be aware of, is that there are other users of this field, and I'm sure the marching band would love to march on grass or turf, other than a parking lot. It's much more conducive because it's a real shock for the kids to go out on their first competition, and they're not on, cement. Anyway, that was one question about the band. The other question I have is, have you investigated the Americans with Disabilities Act requirements for this facility?
For the
Whatever
greater
it
project?
may be.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, they have to be compliant. Any plan has to be compliant.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was on the other committee, and one of the fields, the field, not the concession
The press box.
The press box had to have a lift. For some, in case there was a reporter that was handicapped, so they could go up, that's a state law.
Well,
That
it's
has to
federal,
happen,
so-
so you can't build the thing without handicap facilities available.
And I raised this because not last year, the year before, one of the mothers of one of the students in the marching band was unable to see her son perform because the handicap seating is at base level at Gov Fuller Field, and I know it was built before the ADA requirements were instituted. But this mother could not see her child, and there was no other place for her to be, because she couldn't be up high. There's no way to get there. So Gov Fuller Field was a disaster from any kind of handicap accessibility. Horrible. So please build something.
That's probably true of every field in Falmouth right
Every
now.
field.
Well, but
Every
it's,
single field
they're
in town
old.
of Falmouth is probably, right, which is a good point.
Yeah.
right? Any sport,
Accessibility.
if you're handicapped and want to watch your kid play in Falmouth right now, you wouldn't be able to.
And if you go on, I can give these to you. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division Disability Rights section, they talk about sight lines. So that when someone who uses a wheelchair is sitting in the chair and the people in front of them get up to cheer, the person who is seated should be able to see over those folks. And that's something that doesn't generally happen, so I'll be happy to give this to you afterwards.
Thank you very much. Any other questions before we wrap up? Scott?
Just one quick thing, on that same light with the handicap and whatever. I'm on the rec committee, and I don't know if everyone knows that when the senior center gets built, there's that playground in the middle that is going to be moved to the out back when the football field gets moved. The rec committee has supported and is hoping that an inclusive playground get built. So as part of our campaign, getting an inclusive playground built would only happen if that football field moved, now that the senior center is going to take that spot. So I don't know if everyone knew that, that when that senior center goes and that playground's gone, the rec committee wants an inclusive playground to be built when it can be built. And the town has allocated funds for that playground to get built, but it's under the condition that the football field gets moved.
Right.
So it could be part of the campaign that gets moved, we get the inclusive playground, so just more information.
So I'm going to go to Steve and then Bob.
Actually, it's a question for Scott. I've heard talk that the parking lot for the senior center may encroach upon the outfield or maybe on part of the football field presently.
Not unless
So
it's
does that have any?
Yeah, maybe, actually, that's right, no, only if the football field is moved, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So but that would affect like the baseball field.
Because they're gonna have a temporary, are you talking about as they come in off of,
Dillingham.
off of Dillington?
Dillingham.
Yeah, I saw the plans and there's kind of gonna be like a temporary path that will go around, and they can't make it permanent unless that football field moves. So, down at the rec, there's plans for that, there's those plans that if anyone wants to take a look at them.
Thank you.
Bob?
Hi. I'm a member of the Recreation Committee in 2017.
Chairman.
New chairman. New chairman. Well, anyway, in 2017, we were asked if we would make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen in regards to the senior center coming to the Recreation Department grounds. And if you ask 6 out of 7 of us, 6 out of 7 of us would say no way. Where's what's going to happen to the playground? What's going to happen to parking? How's this all going to work? And we saw some plans, and some people came in. They talked to us, and Sandy Cooney talked to us, and we were asked to support the senior center if they would go where the playground was. And the town was going to set aside, I think, a lot of money, a real lot of money.
It's like
maybe
$250,000?
Oh, $250,000 for a playground to be put sort of near where the football field is. And Sandy Cooney and others suggested to us that this is a community project, that the senior center would go where the playground is, and everyone's going to support the football field, moving down to Gifford Street in the high school grounds, and we could put in a nice all-inclusive playground and back, which would not only accommodate year-round children at the playground, but also accommodate the camp, the summer camp at the recreation department, which is a real significant big thing. So you put the senior center there, you're taking out quite a bit of square feet where the camp is, and then there's no playground, and then all you have is the football field and the geese. And so we were asked to support the move, and we voted 7-0 to support the move on the condition that Fuller Field was going to no longer have the football field. There was a move to the high school and hopefully be an all-purpose field. Of course, all we give is a recommendation. We have the recreation department has no regulatory or any kind of major juice to make this work. But I think it is a big community project. I mean, there's seniors involved in this. I mean, there's youth, there's adults, and this all. I mean, in the Fuller Field, the access to people with disabilities is just not there. If you go out to the high school, maybe we can have at least one field in town where the disabled can come and maybe use a restroom, and have the sight line that you were talking about. The fields that we have now, it's unsafe. It's unsafe for elders. It's unsafe for grandparents to go down and watch their kids play. I think this is a huge community project. I think we should get the seniors involved. I think we should get parents involved, caregivers involved, and it affects a lot of moving parts here in town. And in regards to the artificial turf, I think as the rec committee, I think that we're not going to take a position on whether it's grass or if it's artificial turf, because it's not ours, it's in the jurisdiction of the school. But just speaking as an individual, I'd say if artificial turf was so bad, I think there'd be a lot of class action lawsuits. And I think, you can judge a product by, how often someone sues them. And I think about the NFL, I think about soccer leagues and lacrosse leagues. There's not a lot of lawsuits out there regarding artificial turf, so it must be safe.
Thank you.
One
Yes.
quick question, if I can add. I was unaware of, until this moment when you brought it up, are the seniors aware of that a lot of the senior center and the facilities and so on are going to be directly impacted by the moving of this field? Or are they thinking that their senior center, their parking, all these other structures are going to remain in place if they don't move the field?
I don't know what their understanding is.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Couldn't
Is
speak to that.
maybe they need to be aware of, and somebody brought it up earlier, we do have a huge elderly population that is not against, I don't want to use that word, but not for doing new fields, things like that. It doesn't have anything to do with them. But where this directly impacts them, would that be kind of a bargaining chip, if you would, to move forward with it, seeing they're going to get more facility for themselves by the football team getting, and the rest of the sports teams and community getting this new venue?
Just to make sure that people don't leave with some sort of mixed communications, I do understand that there may be phases of the senior center, but the plan that was voted on does not impact Fuller Field, right? I just want to make sure that the plan that was voted on and is currently, whether it's phase one of several parts, I don't know, but does not impact Fuller Field.
you very much for coming. Okay, I'll take one more question. Yes, comment?
Rich Bradley, Precinct 7 Town Meeting Member. I came here tonight to kind of observe what's going on, and there's a lot of bad information going on in here tonight. The thing about the maintenance cost to fix a 10 by 10 area that gets ripped up in a turf field is about $15,000, which that's not a very big area. And you can take care of a natural grass field, $15,000. The cork is not a good surface at all. The Atlanta Falcons practiced on it for 20 minutes and ripped it up. The Patriots have it, they don't use it. They use natural grass to practice on, or they practice inside Gillette. There's a ton of lawsuits with field turf, is the big one that I heard. I think that's what they put in at Gillette. It lasted 3 months and they ripped it up and they had to redo it. So there's a lot of homework to do here. Health concerns are all over the place. A lot of lower body injuries that all these kids are suffering now because of playing on that turf. When we were kids, we didn't play on that, didn't hear of some of the injuries that you're hearing now that happen all the time. So there's a lot of work to be done. I would also be interested to see what kind of, as this progresses, who's on each one of those committees and what their background is on those subgroups, like the health one especially, to see where they're getting the info from, and they're gonna supply us with info as they go along, or they're just gonna come out with a report at the end.
They'll be supplying info, and they're also contacting people who do this work, whether they're scientists or physicians. They're not just doing it on themselves. They're doing the research, and they're reaching out to people in the community.
And as far as, like, you keep saying, you need to buy in, but it needs to be a good plan, you know?
Totally agree.
Because there's been so many bad things that go on in this town as far as projects and whatnot, and management. And town meetings, in my opinion, at the last town meeting, they don't have a problem with the field. Moving the field there, from what I heard. But they do have a problem being told it's gotta be turf or it's gotta be grass. They want options. And I think everybody wants a nice field, but you just gotta weigh out all those options. And you have to have maintenance. There's zero maintenance pretty much for these fields. That's why they're so horrible. In Gillette has 10 to 15 full-time people and another 15 part-time people that take care of that field. That field gets used a lot too, though, so, and the more you use it, the more you're gonna have to maintain it.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'll just remind you that our next community forum is on February 1st, same venue. So thank you all for coming.